Hi, welcome to Lights Camera Author. This is Jim Juno, and I am welcoming back a friend of the show. She's been on before, but now she has a new book out. Her name is Gillian Gaar, and the new book, let me see if I can hold it up here, is Elton John at 75. And Gillian, welcome back.
Well, it's great to be back.
Elton John, I did not realize he was 75 years old.
Time
Or
flies.
doesn't it? And the book, for one thing, the book is a stunningly beautiful picture book, but it's more than just pictures, it's stories and tales and his life story. And it also comes with some special little bells and whistles, I like to say.
Yeah.
Um, if I can reach over here, and it comes in a beautiful case like this, if I'm not holding it upside down.
Yes. Nope. Nope.
Now,
Right side up.
right side up. And then it surprised me because when I opened the book, I found an envelope here. Now that one's upside down.
There you
That's it. An envelope here, Elton John. Now, and I'm not going to take it all out because I'll never get it back in the envelope right now, but it's a picture of Elton in concert. And then also a poster from his Philadelphia Freedom concert. At least that's what mine was. Is everybody, are there different
go.
posters and pictures?
I never thought to ask, so I don't know.
No
I don't
problem. I
know if I
mean,
looked, I don't know if I looked at the one in my book. I might have, but I can't. I don't think I unfolded the stuff. Yeah, so I don't know.
yeah, I mean,
They're like
the
a big
book.
box set. Box sets they put out these days with CDs, and they often have extra little things in there now, posters and stuff. So this is just kind of similar idea.
See that, and that's what's really is cool because you don't see that too often anymore. You see just basically, well, ultimately just see digital books coming out. You don't see these beautiful box sets, and I just wanted to know. First off, was this? It was endorsed by the Elton John estate, I imagine.
No, we had no contact with them. So
Oh, really?
yeah,
Have you heard anything about them? I mean, from them?
no,
Oh,
no, this
okay.
is good news.
Well, hopefully, good news. Yes, indeed. Because it's a beautiful book. I mean, it's his life story back to the days when he was still known as Reg Dwight,
Yes.
and it goes. Now, I saw the movie Rocket Man, and it mentions that in here, but it goes beyond Rocket Man. It goes beyond the movies. Um, how long did it take you to compile this book?
Well, I had to turn around pretty quickly. I'd say it was around 7 months or so. That was the writing of it. Then it took a little longer after that. You turn the text in and they do some editing and then they give you a layout. The art department does the layout and everything, and they send you that as a PDF to look at and make corrections. Not a lot of rewriting, just fixing things that might be wrong. Um, so that maybe when you add it all together, that might be about a year, but the writing part was definitely less than that. I would have loved to have had a full year just to write it, but I'd say about 7 months.
Now, the writing is just part of it. And I mentioned this at the top of the show that maybe another time is that it has pictures galore.
They did a great job, whoever did the photo research.
I was going to ask you who did the photo research.
Well, that would be the publisher's call. They do that all in house.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I know sometimes publishers bring a freelancer in to do that kind of thing, but most of the time I think all that work's done in house because they want to have a kind of uniformity. Another book came out just before mine on David Bowie. That might have been, was that David Bowie at 80? Anyway, they did Bowie, they did this one. I'm working on a Springsteen one now, so
All
you
right.
want kind of a continuity in there. Yeah, I was just working on it earlier today. In fact, entry number 35.
I gotta ask you to come back on when that book comes out.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be happy to. That's next year.
That's
Oh,
2020,
wait a minute, this year.
20.
It was 2023. So yeah, it's this year.
Yeah, I was gonna say now we gotta think in terms of 2023 here. Now this book it came out. Did it come out in November
Um,
or was it
trying to
Jan
think.
or did it come out in December?
No, it wasn't December. I think it it was going to be in September, and then I think there was a delay with printers, so it was going to be in November. But then I think they must have come in. That got resolved because it came in a little earlier. So I think saying fall is the safest. Fall,
Okay.
last fall, but it was definitely out by November. Yeah.
I'm just wondering now what got you interested in Elton John?
Well, that came from the publisher. They're the ones that made the decision over who they were going to do. Um, So they offered it to me, and I said, yes. I mean, I love that when a publisher comes to you and says, would you like to write such and such? That's great because it's much easier than being the writer and going to a publisher and trying to persuade them to do your idea. I think this is a good idea, and they have to, we have
Mm.
to discuss it, and does the team think we can promote it and all that. So it's great when the publisher comes.
Wow. So yeah, and that's got to be that's now how often does that happen? I mean, obviously you've got a big track record with this publisher for them to respect you that much.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done a number of things for them. I remember years ago they had the book Queen, the Illustrated History, and I read it and thought, oh, it'd be so great to do a book like that. And I later ended up doing some of those. It's same publisher, Quarto. Um, the first thing I did for Quarto was I contributed a chapter to Nirvana, the Complete Illustrated History, and then the next thing I did was The Doors, the Complete Illustrated History, and for that I wrote all the main text. So yeah, I've been with them for a while. Um, but you didn't ask me that. What did you ask me now? What was the original question?
I asked you how you got interested in Elton
Oh,
John.
oh. Well, they were probably, I'm guessing they picked Elton because, well, they're always looking for anniversary hooks and tie-ins and stuff. And so 75, that was the tie-in for them. And a big name. And it kind of dovetailed well with his doing his last tour, which,
Th-
got delayed because it should have been over by now, but the pandemic came and a lot of it got canceled.
That's what I was going. And then also, there's always something happening with him still, though. I mean, yes,
It
he's.
is.
I
You
mean,
know,
he won the Oscar. I believe it was in 2022 that he won the Oscar for Rocket Man,
um,
or I'm gonna love me again, or something like that, or that the latest song.
yeah, I'm not sure he got an Oscar for Rocket Man because I think I would have put that in the book. But since the book came out, there have been a couple things that I thought, wow, if my book came out later, I would have included them. One, he was
Mm-hmm.
working with Britney Spears on the single, and then he was at the White House a couple months ago getting an honor, a national honor. I can't remember now what that was. I think it was a special one for him. It wasn't a Kennedy Center honor or something like that. But and I guess the fun thing there was that he didn't know he was going to get this award. He was at the White House for some kind of presentation and probably talking about his charity work because that's very important to him. And oh, by the way, here we'll give you this congressional medal. I think it's just like, whoa, that'd be a nice little perk. So that would have gone in there.
For some reason, I think he won the Oscar for Best Song. That from the movie Rocket Man. I mean, I'm just thinking that was what he won for. I may be wrong on that, and if and Twitter don't get mad at me if I am. Okay, I apologize if I'm wrong. But the but
Well, he
this
could
book,
have.
yeah, you don't shy away though. I mean, I mean, this is it tells me stories about him that I didn't know. Um, See, I remember him, of course, when I was in high school, a long time ago. Um, and the the Crocodile Rock days, Captain
Oh yeah,
Fantastic. Um,
I love that song.
as I got into radio and got into music more, I learned that he was a keyboardist for T Rex, I believe, Bang a Gong.
Oh yeah, he did. Oh gosh, he was always popping up on other people's records and stuff.
Yeah, and he was in
After he
there's a
got well
video.
known, he would still do that.
Oh, that's true. I mean, so let me ask you this: do you have a favorite song of his?
Gosh, I think it might be Crocodile Rock. Just I think because of the nostalgia factor now. And so it was funny in writing the entry on that to read that he doesn't like it. And then he said that I mean it was kind of a novelty song to him. And he said that after this tour is over, he's not going to play it again because
Oh,
he's sick of it. But yeah, I was there when it came out, so you remember when these things are new and fresh. And that was at the time. It was kind of riding this nostalgia wave we had at the time with Happy Days, the series, and American Graffiti. It was a little later than American Graffiti, but it also it had kind of a modern sound. I mean, it had this retro feel, but it was modern. I mean, I don't
hmm.
think you would have mistaken it for a 1950s song. So that was very well done. It's one of those songs that, well, if you know your music really well, I think probably if you heard those first two chords, you'd probably know what the song was.
Doon doon
Any
doo
of
doo
that
doo doo.
tune?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, you could. I mean, it's right away. You know that if by the multi no well, multi notes the quarter notes I guess is what they were or eighth notes. you know exactly what song you're going to be hearing, and you don't get that a lot nowadays.
No.
Um,
And well now and of course now I think of him being on the Muppet Show doing it. And the little Muppet alligators going "Na, na, 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 na." And so
I think he actually liked that performance. You see it. I mean, he would didn't it, I'm going to go back to the movie Rocket Man again because I think it showed him in that movie in that TV show at one point for some reason. No, oh no, it was a video. It was the music video for "I'm Gonna Love Me Again." That's what it was
mm, mm.
with
I mean with
Taron.
his outfits, he kind of looked like a Muppet character himself, so he fit in well.
Tell me, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you now. You know, because let's face it, when he was younger, a young man, he was very musically talented. I'll say that. But it wasn't so much flamboyancy until I guess he goes solo, right?
Yeah, you mean like earlier when he was playing with not John Mayer.
Bluesology and
Yeah,
like,
bluesology.
mm-hmm. When he's with a group, the early groups, he's I mean, yes, he dresses in the style of the day, but there's no over the top yet. And
Yeah,
then when
even
go ahead.
when he first started solo, he wasn't that over the top. He did a bit, you know, he had the sparkly shirts and things at the troubadour and the big boots, but he didn't really get into that until his career took off. He said it was partly because he's stuck at the piano all the time. So he wanted to make
Oh.
an impression. And you're not a guitar player or the lead singer that can roam around the stage and, you know, kick your leg out and all that kind of thing. And he couldn't do any of that. So they just got
Now,
bigger and bigger and bigger. He said in his autobiography, which I thought was interesting, that it got to a point where Bernie and some other people around him were thinking, you know, this is just too much. You should rein it in, but he didn't want to. So it
I
felt
think
it
he
was
lost me.
distracting from his musicality.
Yeah, he kind of lost me when he dressed as Donald Duck
Oh,
for Central Park. I think it was Central Park concert.
yeah.
Was that it? You know,
He
but
even said that was kind of a mistake. Maybe he didn't try the outfit on much beforehand, but he had difficulty with it. He said once he put it on and waddled out there, well, he had a hard time walking for one. And then he realized he couldn't sit down the way the suit was designed. He could not sit at the piano. So he sort of had to crouch at the piano to play, which by then it was the encore, so not too bad. But yeah, that's why you've never seen that suit again.
well, some things are better left in the closet anyway. You know, so. Tell me, what's your favorite story of his that you found during your research?
Um, maybe well, let's see, maybe one of them would be when he played at Shoreditch College unexpectedly. I read that in Tom Doyle's book, or it must have been in other books, but that's one where it made an impression. Um, Tom Doyle, rock biography, and he did a book about Elton John in the '70s. That I want to say was called Rocket Man, but I'm probably wrong. Anyway, so Shoreditch College, they were having a musical act that was going to come in and play for the students that night, and they canceled last minute. And so the student group that's putting the event on gets together and says, "Well, geez, who could we get as a replacement?" And someone said, "Hey, Elton John doesn't live that far away. Let's ask him." And now this is in 1977. So, you know, he's a big name then. He's, you know, one of the biggest stars in the world at that point. He was taking some time off in '77, didn't do as many shows. They knew he lived outside Windsor, and I guess they could figure out pretty easily enough where he was living. So they drive over there and knock on the door. And then Elton said he was at home watching Wimbledon. I think Wimbledon was on. He was home watching tennis. And the butler comes and says, "Oh, there's some students from Shoreditch College that want to talk to you." And so they ask him if he'll come and do a show that night. And he thinks about it and says, "Okay." So, um, you know, just make sure I have a grand piano and I'll be there. So they go back, and their advisors would not let them move the grand piano into a larger hall. So it had to be in the chapel, which is a smaller place. And they tell everybody, "Elton John is coming." And of course, no one believes them. Like, "Oh, yeah, right." But Elton did indeed show up and played about a half-hour set. And of course, as soon as he's there and setting up and everything, word spreads and everyone floods this room and just stuffs it to the gills. And he plays about a half-hour set. Then he was hanging out with the students afterwards and chatting, and I think they gave him a commemorative glass for it. So,
So he got paid. Okay.
so that was a really fun story.
I
And
like this.
that's kind of how down to earth he was. You know, didn't need to get
It,
his band together. He's like, "Oh, okay, I'll come and play for you." Well, he had nothing else to do.
True. And in reading your book, also you don't shy away. Let's face it, his life has not been all bed unicorns and roses. I mean,
Yeah.
let's say that. I mean, he's made mistakes, and people have taken advantage of him. But you know, the goodbye letter to drugs, which really I think should be required reading for people wanting to get off drugs. That kind of struck me when I was reading it.
Yeah, that's from his autobiography where I read that. I mean, one helpful thing about doing this is that yes, people know Elton had a big drug problem, substance abuse problem, not just drugs. But he has his own book out and he talks about it there. And even before his autobiography, he was pretty frank himself in addressing it. So this stuff is out there. So people know it and you can write about it in just sort of, straightforwardly. And it doesn't have to be salacious. Just this is what happened. And I must say reading his book was an eye opener because you knew he had these addiction problems, and once someone goes into rehab you figure, okay, it was a big problem for them. But then when he describes what he was doing, you think, gosh, how is this man even alive?
Mm.
Although one of the amusing stories he related that was kind of funny, back in his drinking and drugging days, he was giving some big party in LA at whatever home he was renting, and he was out of it on whatever, and he saw this guy there that he couldn't figure out who he was, and he was just kind of sloppily dressed and everything, and he thought he was the gardener. And he keeps going, "What's the gardener? What's the bloody gardener doing here at my party? I don't open my doors to everybody," going on and on and on. And finally, someone pulls him aside and says, "Elton, that's Bob Dylan." But uh, substance abuse is not that easy to tackle and deal with, and people do backside. They do have problems. It's difficult, and so he really showed a lot of strength and willpower in getting through this. And he detailed a lot of what he did in the book, how he pretty much just took time off from performing, went to all the meetings, needed all this help. He walks about going to rehab and wanting to walk out right away, but no, no, you really have the breaking point. You got to go through with this. So it is a real story and courage. And boy, I hadn't appreciated really until writing this just the benefit that came to him from cleaning up, because from that point it's like his career just had another high after that, just went up, 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 up. Suddenly, all his energy wasn't devoted into where am I going to get drugs. It was, well, what work am I going to do? And that was when he did The Lion King, and it opened up a whole new career for him. And so many other high points have come because now he had this energy and he was healthy, even getting in a good relationship finally.
Finally, yes, I know
Yeah.
he's finally. Yes, he's finally in a non-abusive, a loving relationship, and you just feel like, okay, he finally found somebody, and he deserves it. I mean, after all he's been through.
Well, what I like in the section where I wrote about that, where he meets David Furnish and they get together, he just said how, he felt for the first time in his life it was like an actual real relationship, because David had his own place to live, he had his own car, he had a job, he had his own life. So he wasn't just like this hanger on in Elton's orbit. So
It wasn't a parasitic relationship.
yeah, yeah.
Let me. Do you think that people like Elton John, I mean, they can be targets of people, can't they? I mean, I guess fame comes with a price.
Oh yeah. Gosh, especially now, the way people can get out there on social media and things, and they just sort of latch on and pick on anything. You didn't even have to be a celebrity. You make the news for whatever reason, and then yeah, everyone's like leaping on you. So
Oh yes.
yeah, it's not easy, but he seems to have weathered it pretty well. I think also people, unless you're in that position, I don't think you can really appreciate what it's like to be that famous. I mean, I know some famous people, but and I've been around them and maybe been in their homes and stuff, and you get a sense of what it's like, but it's different when it's not you, you know.
Oh yeah.
And people don't realize that. They think, oh, you have all the wealth and fame, and you can, but well, especially with wealth, think of how many stars got ripped off for one reason or another, or they blew all their money on drugs or other things, luxury mansions, blah blah, and then suddenly 5 years later, wait, where did all those millions go? So
And
it's more difficult than you realize.
so I always see people with entourages, as they say, and you know that someday all those people are going to go away because you're not famous anymore.
Yeah, you're not providing enough. That
Mm-mm.
was one interesting thing about Seattle. You didn't really see people with entourages so much.
In
You'd
Seattle.
yeah, yeah. You'd see, I don't know, members of Nirvana. I'd see members of Nirvana and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, and they'd be out at a club and they wouldn't pull up in a limo and come out with five other guys around them or anything. It was maybe they'd have a few friends, but it wasn't or a date or wife or whoever, but it wasn't an entourage. They tried to keep it kind of low key.
Let me ask you what. Tell me about the Tom Bell sessions because for some reason that album is one of my favorites,
Well,
and
it was
it's an
really
album
different.
that not I'm not it's an album that not a lot of people remember.
Yeah, well, I think part of it was that, the songs kind of crept out. It was going to be the next thing, and then it wasn't. Then some came out, and then more of it came out decades later. So, but it was interesting, and done here in Seattle. So that was interesting for me to look into that and thinking, oh, where did he stay? I think he might have
Mm,
stayed at the. I think he stayed at the Olympic Hotel. Um, do I know that, or I just think that? You're trying to think where would he stay here in the '70s? That was
yeah.
probably the top hotel. The Westin was open, but the Four Seasons Olympic, well, the Stones stayed there. Apparently, they weren't very impressed with it. But he loved soul music and loved the Philadelphia sound and what they were doing there. And he wanted to just. What's interesting about this is that he said he just wanted to be the singer. He wanted to be the performer and not and have someone else produce. And he would just sing. And he didn't. I don't think he wanted. I don't think he even plays piano on that, does he? You know those songs, so
No, no, it
yeah.
doesn't.
So
Yeah,
that was
it's
unusual. He put himself in someone else's hands to do that. And also that, Seattle had a world class enough studio that he would come here to do it.
you talked about the pandemic, and I'm just wondering. Let me ask you about from an author standpoint, how's the pandemic been for y'all?
Well, when, I worked at home, so a lot of times there wasn't that much change. They'd say, stay home and don't go out. And you think, well, that's kind of what I do. um, I'm situated now in a pretty good location, and the grocery store isn't that far away, and the library, and the post office, and the bank. And I was thinking about this during the pandemic. I thought, gee, even before the pandemic, there would be times I wouldn't really have to go more than 5 blocks out of the
Mhm.
immediate neighborhood. And with the exception of the library, and I missed the library being open, all those other places were open.
Wow.
And my favorite restaurant, a neighborhood restaurant, a Mexican place, family owned, they were already doing takeout meals. So they just boosted that side of the business. And they had an advantage in that a lot of other restaurants, quickly put together how to do takeout and all that. But Casino already was doing it. So they were that much further ahead. So I could still get a meal there if I wanted. And I took a lot of walks and discovered more of the neighborhood.
Oh, fantastic. The author's name is Gillian Gaar, and the book is Elton John at 75. Get it right in front of the camera there and
There
knock
we
over my
are.
microphone. Hey,
Yay.
so, and Gillian, again, I thank you for being on the Lights Camera Author with me tonight.
Well, it was fun. I always enjoy being here.
Thank you.